All right, Mike, welcome back. So you had a pretty interesting weekend, huh?
I did. I got super sick, so I'm feeling a little bit better, but my voice probably doesn't have the same dulcet tones, and I apologize for that.
Dulcet tones, dulcet tones. Well, I'm glad you're feeling better. I'm glad your voice is back. For those of you who um, subscribe and are pro members, this is going to come out a little bit later because we delayed a little bit so Mike could actually talk and not lose his voice about 10 minutes into the show. So in our pro show that we just did, we talked about my creative ideas. Mike gave me a mini coaching session. He may charge me for that. He may not charge me for that. I don't know. But if you're interested, you can become a Bookworm Pro subscriber. We'll tell you about that at the end of the show. So, but today we need to think about follow-up items, and then we think about playing it safe. But let's get to follow-up first. So, Mike, you wanna hit your follow-up items first?
I guess. So the first one, which was sort of the impromptu one, as we were talking through the last episode, you were doing a coaching session for me and telling me I needed to hire a video editor. So I have actually, I'll say I've hired one. I've started a trial with a service called VidPros, which I
Okay.
heard about, I think, in Ali Abdal's Part-Time YouTuber Academy. So basically, it's a dedicated video editor that you get part-time, and then they have a full-time option as well. But I started the trial for the part-time one. Then I got sick. So I'm like, hey, I'm ready to go. I've got this project. They said, great, your account is up. Hours later, I was feeling like I was dying. So I haven't uploaded anything yet. I just
Okay.
emailed them this morning, said, hey, can you extend the trial? I'm going to get some stuff up later today. But basically the goal is like you can do one video to see what it's like before you would commit to paying $1,000 a month or whatever it is, which sounds like a lot. But if it allows me to double or triple my video output on YouTube, it will very quickly be worth it since I am monetized. And the thing that is holding me back from making money on YouTube is simply the number of videos that I can get out.
Number of videos.
Yeah, it's not the ideas. So that one is done. You have follow up with that?
Can you remind me or remind everybody where they would go to follow you on YouTube? Because
Sure.
you've done some rebranding, and I don't remember specifically what the channel is now and all that stuff.
Yeah. So I actually have my name as the handle. So
Okay.
it's youtube.com/Mike Schmitz, I believe. If you search for Mike Schmitz, you won't find me. You'll find a Catholic priest.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
not me. I'm the one that talks about obsidian.
Thank you. All right. Any more?
Yeah, I had one other one, which is to build a high ticket offer. So when you floated the idea of the creative coaching, I was like, well, maybe this will be a way for me to test my high ticket offer. And so, yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this. I've texted back and forth with you. And let me just talk through, I guess, like everything I've got so far. We've got the YouTube channel that basically builds the email list because of the starter vault that I mentioned, and people download that for free. Then the product is basically Life HQ, the done for you vault. To upgrade from there, it's really the cohort and the community that goes with that. That is all like hundreds of dollars for the cohort and the community. So that's not, small money, but when I'm talking high ticket, like what is the thing that I can do better than anybody in the world that's like insanely valuable? And I feel like I'm starting to get there. So I have success as an integrator at a digital marketing agency. I understand systems. I have gone through starting from nothing and creating stuff online. And I talk about, the PKM stack and the creativity flywheel frameworks. I think what I'm going to try to do as my high ticket offer is like small group coaching. So there'll be a program that goes with it, but there'll also be like live group coaching calls, hot seats, things like kind of like what we did in the pro show,
Yeah.
where it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
okay, you want to, but it'll be more defined because specifically it's going to be people who want to make something online and make money from it.
Nice.
So I'm still trying to decide if I want to like zero it in on writing, because I feel like writing is going to be the basis of it, but it could be a
Okay.
podcast, it could be a YouTube channel. But essentially what I'm going to walk people through is, okay, you need to figure out what's the platform that you're going to get attention on. What are
Mhm.
you going to offer those people so you can start building your list? And then what are you going to create that you can monetize and sell as a product that those people would actually want? And I feel like I could help people plug in the PKM pieces with that. Obviously, like I do a lot of that through Obsidian, but MindNode and Capture, all that kind of stuff, figuring out the nuances of the different platforms and how are you going to make scheduling these things easy, all that kind of stuff. I know that. I have trouble doing it myself. That's kind of the thing that's holding me back right now is like, well, who am I to teach this because I don't do it myself? I sort of do it myself. I've had success publishing online with like the Ship 30 cohorts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But because I'm a one-man band and I'm trying to do all these different things, I lose momentum. So I feel like I'm going to get there quickly now that I'm starting to get some help in some certain areas. I'm also looking at an assistant and delegating different things that just like I shouldn't be doing, not because I'm too fancy or they're not worth doing, they're below me or anything like that, but they're things that I could easily delegate to somebody else so that I could lean into the things that I do really well, which is great stuff. So right now the focus is on getting through the next cohort, but I think I'm going to try to test some things in that cohort. And then after that, probably do something with this high ticket offer. I guess if you're interested in that sort of thing, I don't have like a sign up page or anything, but reach out to me. I'm on Blue Sky now, as we talked about in the pro show.
Yep.
So, yeah, but I'm excited about that. I feel like I could really help people in that particular way.
I think so too. I think I'm excited for this as well because it's like, I told you it via text, right? Like it's the natural next step, I think, in the work that you're already doing. Or sorry, it's a natural next step in the work that you're already doing. And I'm really, really intrigued to see what you're able to, do with people and for people through that like real intentional, kind of situation. And then also what you learn from it, right? Like I think you're going to get a lot of really creative and like clever ideas that'll feed into the rest of your business, right? Like, and you'll be able to like get new ideas and you'll be like, oh, I was working with these clients. I'm going to call them clients, right? Like, I don't know if that's what you're going to refer to them as or not.
Yeah,
but
I guess they are. It's funny because I just had somebody reach out to me via like a cold DM, and I normally don't reply to those, but I noticed a bunch of the people that follow this person were people that I look up to. And so I started a conversation, and he was talking about, are the people that buy from you clients or customers? I'm like, they're customers. I don't do clients, but okay. You're right. This would be clients.
I think when you get to this, it's much more of a client because it's more of a relationship, right? Like that's the way I think about it. I think customer is more of a transaction.
Exactly.
This is more of a relationship. I mean, I think you're going to learn a ton. I think it's going to be good for you. And then, I mean, we'll get into our book and not to hit the book too early. Like there isn't failure in this. There is a bunch of learning in this, even if it doesn't go the way you think it's going to go, which I think is a very valuable thing. So awesome. All right. So those are Mike's follow-up items. Mine was to go back through the notes and pull out the visuals. So instead of doing this, right, I actually just went to Richie Norton's site and I got the anti-time management free, starter kit. So from him. So
hey,
in my mind,
work smarter, not harder.
yeah, in my mind, checks that box, right? So it checked that box for me, and I'm feeling good about the fact that I followed up on this.
I'll give you a green check mark for that.
Yeah, thank you. I told you last time, like anti-time management was like a real. It messed with my brain a lot, and it's one of those ones that. So my work goes in seasons, right? So the fall season is crazy, and the early part of the semester and the late part of the semester are particularly crazy. When then there's a little bit of a lull where you're prepping for next semester and kind of wrapping up the previous semester, and then it gets crazy again in the spring, and then early and late is crazy again, and then summer. This is one that I'll probably revisit in the summer. Anti-time management's one, and I don't think I'll go back and read the book. I think I'll look at my notes and I'll compare it to his starter kit and just try to figure out like what does it mean? Like does it mean anything for me? How does it how do I incorporate that into my daily life and existing operations and stuff? So
cool.
Yeah. All right. So today's book was Never Play It Safe by Chase Jarvis. it's a book that's structured in terms of an intro. You have 7 different ideas that Chase walks you through, and then the conclusion is super tiny. So he's got a disclaimer in it, which I've not encountered this many times. It's basically like a, hey, read this first, right? So it's the equivalent of you download software, and it's like, read me, right? Like, do the read me. But in this situation, I thought that was good. So we'll start with the read this first and introduction, and then I think, Mike, if you're good with it, we'll go through each of the 7 levers, what he calls the levers for life, and we'll work through the show that way. Sound good?
Sounds good. Hopefully my voice will hold out.
I think it will. I feel confident.
All right.
So let's go through the read this first and the introduction. One of the things that I got out of this was he has a Helen Keller quote that security is mostly a superstition. It does not exist in nature, nor do the children of men as a whole experience it. And I thought that was really, really interesting. It's like, we think about this safe life. We think about like trying to lead this safe life. And like, I don't think that is realistic. I think we try really, really hard to make that a reality. But like, I think we need to let that go and understand that like life isn't safe, and that's okay. And then it turns, safety into risk mitigation, which I think risk mitigation is something we've been doing for thousands of years, and we've always done, is like, oh, okay, the world isn't safe, but I can mitigate my risks. I cannot run towards the edge of the cliff. I cannot, directly confront the wild animal in nature. So I really like that idea of restructuring this idea of safe. And he does that right off the bat.
Yeah, he mentions that safety is an illusion, and that playing it safe is basically about fear being optimized for survival, and the best stuff being just outside of your comfort zone, which is kind of all stuff that we've tangentially discussed in other books that we've read. But he just smacks you in the face with it right at the beginning and makes you very uncomfortable, which I'm curious. You mentioned that anti-time management really challenged you in some ways. I feel like this is a follow-up probably was a little bit unfair.
Yeah. I would agree. I mean, like, we'll talk about it later in style and rating, but like where you and I are in life and where he is, safety is a very, very different thing. And like the idea of being able to take risks and what those risks look like. Now, that doesn't mean I don't take away a bunch of stuff from this book. It just means I think the contextual scenarios matter in this, but I'm going to pause on that and we'll push that to later.
Well, let me actually push back on that a little bit, because I think that's the traditional thinking, and you're not wrong for thinking that if you're reading through this book, I think. But I think there's another argument to be made here where, no, it's still the same, just maybe the stakes are higher. Because you hear these stories about the people who are really successful, and most of them went bankrupt multiple times before they hit it big. So is it that, they got to a point where, they can now play it, I don't want to say play it safe. Like, I'm struggling with terminology here. Like, it doesn't have the same amount of risk as somebody who's living paycheck to paycheck and trying to make ends meet. Like, does this not apply to me because I'm still trying to dig out of some credit card debt that we amassed while I was trying to get my business off the ground? I kind of think no. At first I was like, well, yeah, it probably does, because I have a very short runway to work with. And he's got, multiple homes and talks about taking walks on the beach, like the ocean, outside of his backyard. Like, aren't you fancy? Like, that's the easy excuse, I feel. So I would encourage people not to make that, because I feel like if you accept that excuse, your world gets made a little bit smaller and you now have some options that are eliminated. And again, kind of like, what's the worst thing that can happen here? All these successful people who own these crazy big businesses, they filed bankruptcy before. So is that what I'm really afraid of? Like, being in the position that they were? You don't want to think of that as an option.
Yeah.
But it is an option. If the worst thing in the world happens, that could be something. And it's, as evidenced by other successful people, it's not the end of the world that your head tells you it is.
Yeah. Yep. And you're right in alignment with him, because he makes a statement there. He's like, he's not talking about putting on sunscreen, wearing seatbelts and all that stuff. He's talking about the things that you do. And this is a quote, that keeps most people living lives of a fraction of their potential, or to a fraction of their potential. It's playing it small, right? Like, so yes, exactly what you said is, it's these ideas of like, oh, you're intentionally limiting yourself because you're not willing to take that risk and to do that thing. And I'm on board with that, right? Like, I'm on board with that. We'll get to more of my side of the argument later on down.
Cool.
All right. So, moving into the introduction, anything else kind of really stand out for you? I mean, he goes out and he outlines the 7 levers. So I'll go through those real quick. Attention, time, intuition, constraints, play, failure, and practice. And then those are literally the 7 chapters that make up the bulk, or, the majority of this book. And he basically unpacks each of those.
Yeah, there was a term he used, I think it's mimesis, which is wanting the same thing everyone else wants because it's what we see when we look around. When he shared that definition, I realized that I have definitely fallen into that.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of immediately recognized the danger of it in a more clear way than I ever have. It's still like something that you have to work through, that you struggle through, because even with like my creator business, I'm starting to get some traction, and it's like, okay, so what is the next step? The next step can never be exactly what it was for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
I'm realizing, like, my path has to be unique.
Yeah.
And just even like some of the other creator circles that I run in, I've noticed like, oh, this is the obvious next thing for me, and I get excited about it. I tell it to somebody and they're not excited about it. I'm like, well, why do they just not get it? It's like, no, they have a totally different path. And I look at their business and, what makes them successful. And I'm like, that would never work for me. So why am I trying to copy them? Because, they've reached a level of audience size that I'm trying to get to. Like, and once you get over that, I can tell you, like, the place I'm at right now is like, it's exciting because there's all sorts of options.
Yeah. I can see that.
Like, one thing that I never really thought about before, I saw somebody online who I look up to. I've actually done coaching with this person. They have a pretty big YouTube channel, and they mentioned that they had a sponsor drop out, and they're trying to fill it. The ideal fit is some sort of productivity tool. And I was like, oh, well, I have a productivity tool. So I reached out and I'm like, hey, I'd like to try, a YouTube ad. And the more I think about it, the rates and things like that, it's an investment, right? And at this point in my creator journey, I wasn't looking for like, well, now is the time I really got to focus on ads. Yeah. But to the coaching call that we had in the pro show, it's a tiny experiment. Yeah. Like, I can do it once. I can do it for a small amount of people, or for a small investment. And as I'm thinking about it, I'm like, if a couple people buy it, it's worth it.
Yeah.
Plus, it gets in front of all of these other viewers that this person has. Like, I don't know how many other opportunities are there like that for me. That wouldn't be a good thing for a lot of the other creators that I look up to. Like, they don't have a product that would be a good fit for, but it's like a great fit for me.
Yeah.
Like, just the audience and the product, it's unique for the people that he's speaking to. It's an opportunity for him because we can do an affiliate link. Feel very excited about it in a way that I haven't before, and I'm looking for those things.
Yeah, for sure.
And the whole message of this book of like, don't play it safe. It's like, yeah, go do that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and then, the third lever he brings up in here is intuition. It's like, I can hear you talking about it. Like, there's an intuition here that's like, I'm going to learn something from this. I'm going to get something from this that's not just me throwing money and burning it. Like something's going to come out of this. And I think that's huge. Like, I think you have to trust that. And you've been doing this successfully. So it's like, you got to trust that intuition. You got to go with that gut. Okay. So one last thing in the introduction, then I'm going to move us to the attention to chapter 1. But he talks about the explorer and how if somebody's off by just a degree, that thousands of miles later, that's significantly different, right? And I see this very much in the idea of safety and the idea of like, oh, okay, so it's like, I think I need to be this safe. And like you're saying, do we really need to? Like, what's the worst that happens? But because I made that decision when I was 17 or 20 or 24 or whatever it was, right? Like now I'm in this situation, and I'm theoretically thousands of miles away from that, and I'm playing it way more safe than I actually would need to, right? Like, and I haven't reanalyzed the situation. I haven't reassessed where I'm actually at. I think that's a really powerful idea to think about, like reassess. What are the non-negotiables, if you will, right? Like, and then once you figure out what the non-negotiables are, anything else, is you making up the illusion of safety, making up the idea of like, oh, I have to do these other things in order for it to be safe. So I thought that was a really good mental like framing for what we're doing.
Yeah, one of the things that came to mind with that section for me is that when it comes to safety, there is this huge unintended emphasis on the value of the sunk cost. And he doesn't describe it this way, but I have a economics degree. So that's where my mind went. It's like, oh, sunk cost fallacy. Yeah, you should just not take that into consideration or figure out what the right thing to do right now is. But what you're describing is that, and I've totally given into that before either. I've been doing this for a while. I've got all this momentum. And just the name, sunk cost fallacy, when I thought of it that way this time around, it was like, obviously, you need to chuck all that stuff. It doesn't matter. But I spent all this money and I got the degree, and doesn't matter. If it was the right thing to do then, like, that's great. It's probably still going to be the right thing to do now. But if it wasn't the right thing to do then, just digging in is going to make you more miserable. So I say it that way, not to like pick on you, because I know like where you are, like there are requirements and you have to have the degrees, right? You mentioned like the PhD and stuff like that. But for other people who are in that situation, I don't know, like I went to a private school. I assumed a whole bunch of student loans that eventually I got out of, but I can see how like that sort of thing is like, oh, I got to see this through.
Yep.
And that could very much be the wrong decision. It could be the right decision too, to be perfectly clear. But just because you have made that decision previously does not mean that is the right decision for you right now, dear listener.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so we're going to move on to lever one. So lever one is attention, right? And he calls it a superpower. So lever one is attention, the superpower. He hits on one of your favorite people, Viktor Frankl, right? So I was like, oh, Mike's going to be happy that he touched
Viktor Frankl and Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi in the same chapter.
I didn't remember the second one, but the first one I was I pegged. So he calls out a bunch of different things in this chapter, but one of the things I thought was really interesting is he gives you a series of ways to focus your attention: meditation, mindfulness, prayer, journaling, gratitude. Again, I thought you would connect really, really well with that, because these are things that I've heard you talk about either through, the library or through, one of your courses or focused. I like that the idea of ditch the shiny object syndrome and focus on the one thing. I think the reason why I like that so much is because I think that's where I struggle. Like I struggle a little bit with that shiny object syndrome. And then figuring out what is the one thing, like what's the one thing I'm going to focus on. And interestingly, like for me, where this is strange is it's not really with my day job. Like that's easy. Like I'm going to focus on the one thing. And what is that? That is helping the students learn as much as they can and helping them grow and personally develop as much as they can. Boom, easy, done, check. It's like, but when it comes to these creative things on the side, my goodness, you want to talk about shiny object syndrome and like not having a one thing, like I'm all over the place. So, so attention.
Yeah, there's definitely a focus on attention. He gives you 3 ways to practice paying attention to your body, paying attention to the people around you, paying attention to your environment. He talks about the different kinds of distractions and how what we pay attention to expands. But the quote that he shared from here that really stands out to me from this section is from Andy Warhol, where he says, "Don't think about making art, just get it done. Let everyone else decide if it's good or bad, whether they love it or hate it. And while they are deciding, make even more art." Which I like that quote, and the emphasis there is on just make the thing. As I shared with you in the pro show, though, I think there's another element to this that is a little bit missing, and that's kind of like the make noise, listen for signal. If you're going to use this, you mentioned the side hustle, creative pursuit. But I think for anybody who's testing things, recognizing what sort of impact it has is important. So I agree with this, focus on doing the thing and recognize that being able to direct your attention is kind of a superpower, but also something you're going to be practicing the rest of your life. He talks about how it's a lifelong practice later in this chapter. But if you're trying to make something online, let's say, you do need to see what resonates with people. That's a data point. That's not the only data point. It's not the only thing that you pay attention to. Sometimes you just want to make something because it's stirring in your soul, and you got to get it out there. But I want to call that out because there's a lot of emphasis on that in here. And then one of my action items comes from this chapter as well, which is kind of to the point of that quote. We tend to worry about what other people think about what we do, and maybe it's not the right people.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to make something for somebody, you have an audience that you're trying to reach, and you're trying to sell them something that solves a problem that they have, you do need to care what they think. But there are lots of people who will freely share their opinions and their IQs online, and you shouldn't necessarily listen to all of those.
Yeah.
So one of my action items is to create that short list of people whose opinion of you really matters.
Well, and I like to tie into that. He talks about here deciding who you will let down, and being okay with the fact that you're going to let some people down, and you can't get away from that. No matter what you do, no matter how you try to hit everybody with everything that they need, you're never going to do that. It's never going to happen. So you're going to let somebody down, figure out who it is, figure out who you're okay with letting down. And then I think to tie to your action item, essentially like make that list and rank them and be like, okay, if I let these people down, I'm going to be really, really bummed. If I let these people down, I'm going to be bummed, but it's going to be okay. If I let these people down, I could really not care about that at all, and that's totally fine. And I think like having like those tier, the tier list of people, the tier list of letdowns, I think would be good. Mike, what did you think about the flashlight metaphor? Do you remember the flashlight metaphor? It's basically
I'm a little foggy still. Sorry.
Okay, so so attention's like a flashlight. You can choose where to focus it, right? So you think about a flashlight not having a super wide beam, but having one of the more narrow beams. And it's like, oh, if I'm in a really dark, like completely pitch black room, if I shine it on that thing, my attention is on the thing I shined it on, and nothing else. Everything else kind of goes away. Whereas in our world anymore, it's almost as if like everybody is, lit up all the time, or all the things are lit up all the time, and we have a really hard time focusing on that. Did that resonate with you at all?
Kinda. So when I think of a flashlight, I don't think I heard him describe it this way, but I've definitely heard people talk about it this way. You can adjust the focus, so it can cast like a real wide light, and then it doesn't really light up anything, or you can really focus it. But I actually would take that even further. In fact, I preached a message at my church not too long ago about the power of focus and like a laser beam, because that is essentially focused light. Yeah. And it's really powerful when you can focus it on a single point.
Yep.
But if you can't focus it on a single point, like it really doesn't have much power or impact. So I like the metaphor, but I didn't think actually his version of it was as powerful as it could have been.
Yeah, okay. All right, good, dude.
So definitely agree with it though.
Yeah. Anything else on attention, or are you ready to move to lever two?
Nah, let's go to lever 2.
Okay. So lever 2 is time. Time, the magic of presence. And basically, he is very, very similar to our last book, where he talks about the fact that time management is broken. It doesn't work. So try to stop doing that. He the old adage where time expands, or contracts depending on the activity that we're doing. You tie this into flow states and you tie this into procrastination. So you can make a bunch of ties there. I like the idea of infinite games versus finite games, where the finite game is like a game of chess and you have a clear winner and it's over at a certain time. And essentially what we want to be thinking about is infinite games and the fact that really we just want to keep moving forward. And how are we going to keep moving forward? And where we're going to put our attention is going to be how we're going to keep moving forward. So there's a bunch of good experiments here. We get in, or sorry, not experiments. I was looking at my next point. There's a bunch of good insights in here. One of them being the tiny experiment. Like, how do I run the tiny experiment? How do I do that next thing that's going to help me learn, that's going to teach me about kind of where I want to go in this infinite game that I'm playing?
Yeah. I can tell you there's a couple of things that were really impactful for me from this chapter, but I don't think they were the same things that that stood out to you.
Okay.
One of them is the concept of being a time billionaire. He said that 1 billion seconds is roughly 31 years. And he said most of us who are reading this book are time billionaires. And he uses that as a point to support the point that he's making, that we need to stop thinking about, time being short. And he actually says that the saying life is short kind of implies we can't afford to make any mistakes. And I sort of agree with that. So he wants us to disconnect from that. He wants us to recognize that we have more time than we think we do. And we can transform our relationship with time by being deliberate about what we do and how we do it. So I think that's a really cool idea. It's very much, like you mentioned, complementary to the book that we covered last time. And then he gives in here a whole bunch of triggers, which were from Stephen Kotler from the Flow Research Collective. I actually documented all of these in my mind map notes. There's internal triggers, there's external triggers, creative flow triggers, and group flow triggers. And the idea here being, flow is this elusive state we're trying to get into. We've heard it takes so much time to get into a state of flow. And I like these as maybe you can just use these to get into flow faster and create it, kind of on demand. That's a cool idea. I don't know what exactly to do with that. I don't have an action item associated with that, but I do have an action item associated with the story that he told at the beginning with the friend that he was working with. And I forget the person's name, but, they were a successful business person, and at dinner one night, someone asked him, "So what's your thing?" And he doesn't have a good answer. It's like, well, I forget the specifics of the story. Was he working on Wall Street or something? And it's living the New York nightlife or something,
I don't remember it all either. So
yeah, but then he was struck when someone asked him, "So what's your thing?" And he's like, "Well, basically I don't have a thing. I do what all these other people do. But what I really want to do is this other thing." So I want to have an answer for the question, what's your thing?
What's your thing?
Now, when I was in Boise, about a month ago, maybe a little more than that, recording the videos for the Creativity Flywheel course and then also the PKM Stack course, I bumped into Clay Herbert. He was there with Nathan Barry recording a case study thing for his course or for his podcast episode. And so I was talking to him in the little lobby thing. We were both just hanging out. I stepped out for a breather between my videos. Hey, I'm Mike. Oh, I'm Clay. What do you do? I didn't have a real good answer for what do I do. And turns out he's the guy who teaches Your Perfect Intro. He's got a TED Talk on it or something. But basically that question of what do you do, that he helps people answer that.
Okay.
So the thing that he gave me, kind of an impromptu coaching session in the lobby of the Kit Studios in Boise, because he uses Obsidian. Yeah. He's dabbled with it.
Okay.
So I was like, oh, well, you got this Life HQ thing. He's like, okay, so you basically help people organize their life using an app they've probably never heard of.
He gave you your perfect intro in the lobby.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't like 100% love that,
Agreed.
but I love the direction that that's going. And then, when like, what's your thing? That's a different version of that. So it's like, I really got to pay attention to that and I got to nail that down.
Yeah.
I'm already kind of thinking about it anyways. So
Yeah.
might as well make an action item out of it.
Yeah. So do you see that different than an elevator pitch?
No, I think it probably is the same sort of thing, but Clay Herbert has a framework for it, which is really good. And then in the podcast episode they did with Nathan Barry, he's talking about you help people verb their noun, right? So what is the thing that you help people do?
So was that in this book as well?
Right.
Like there's, I think I have it later on in my notes about, something that it was the doing the verb then allowed you to be the noun. And was it like Maya Angelou writing? I'm pretty sure it was Maya Angelou writing. And that was the verb to noun thing, which I thought that was a really clever turn of phrase as well. And like, it's really meaningful.
Yeah. So I don't know, like, I'm sure that's like one piece of Clay's thing. Like I haven't actually watched the video from him. I've been scrambling. It's been on my list. Like I got to check this guy out, follow him on whatever network he's on. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think he might actually be at Craft and Commerce this summer.
Nice.
You got to come to that, by the way.
I know you've told me that, and I need to figure out if I can, and what the plan would be. So
they got dates.
Yeah.
Let's get you there.
Okay. Okay. So there was something. Oh, here's another question for you in this section. I'll go first, but what is if you had a flow trigger, what is the one that works the most effectively for you if you have one? So I can tell you mine right now would be to throw my over-the-ear headphones on. It has to be over-the-ear headphones. It can't be in earbuds. It's got to be over-the-ear headphones, and it's to put on some sort of music with no words. So it could be like chill step. It could be a soundtrack. What I've actually been getting into lately is video game soundtracks. That like there's something about them and the repetitive nature.
Good choice.
Yeah, like the repetitive nature of them. That man, I put those on, and like really, really quickly, I'm doing meaningful work. Like I'm focused. I'm doing meaningful work. I'm not worried about if anybody's knocking on my door or if anybody's gonna come in. Like the email tends to disappear and float away. Like that's a very effective flow trigger or flow state inducer, if you will, for me. Do you have one?
Not like that. Well, okay. So the flow triggers that he lists here, I think are a little bit different than what you're talking about. So I have different things in my environment that I try to use to create flow. One of them is I go to the co-working space to do all my writing, because sitting in that co-working space is just a better environment for that kind of thing. And I'm more creative when I'm there. But in terms of the triggers that he listed here, I was thinking about that. Like, which one am I actually going to use? And I don't know that there's a whole lot of these I like.
Okay.
A lot of them are kind of like, it's great when you get there, but it's hard to do that. Like, I don't know. I don't like to go into a task if I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but novelty is one of those triggers. Mm-hmm. So I have experienced that. Does that mean that I want to use that tactically? I don't know. Yeah. Risk is another one, kind of like impending deadlines are a version of this in my opinion, where you put off a task until you absolutely have to get it done. And now there's a risk, like you get into it and it's more involved than you thought it was going to be. And you're not going to get the thing done before you have to present it on Monday. As a random example.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do that sometimes, I don't really know how to do these. I think the thing out of these that I really want to figure out a way to implement is the challenge part. What are the things where my skills are required for the task at hand? And that kind of gets into the delegation stuff. If I just pick the tasks that are challenging for me, I think I'll do better work. I'll do like higher quality work. I also think I'll probably do less of it because it'll be hard.
Yeah.
It's going to zap my energy.
That makes sense.
So,
and then if you tap rest into that too, you'll need to build in more rest to your schedule, right? Like if you're doing really, really hard work, you got to build more rest in, so that's good too. All right. If you're good with it, lever 3. All right. So lever 3 is intuition, the art of trusting yourself. Now, I have a love-hate relationship with this chapter, and that's probably too strong, but you know what I mean? Like, there are aspects of this chapter that I really, really like, and there are aspects of this chapter that are just too, like, fluffy and ethereal, like, for me, but that's okay. We'll move through. So it's really this idea of, like, hey, what is your intuition telling you? And it's like, I know this is true. I know that, like, there are situations where, you know, you get that gut feeling. You get that thing that's like, okay, hold on. Something's off here. Like, something's going on. Like, I can tell you this week I have one, right? I have a strong one. I had one 2 weeks ago, right? That ended up turning out to be exactly what I thought it was going to be. So it's like, I know this is true and I know this is here. So let's get into what the chapter actually talks about more. But so he's got these signs of intuition, quote unquote, speaking, or signs of you're feeling this intuition. So body signals, tense, looseness, gut feeling, immediate impressions, right? So that he quotes the hell yes or no, right? Like, I'm either going to really do that thing or nope, I'm not doing it at all. Past experiences, the energy alignment, what feels right, what produces your energy, emotional alignment, like the idea of rightness or wrongness, or happy or sad. Quiet, so, you know, like, how am I being mindful and being quiet and just listening to what's going on in my subconscious, if you will, if you could even do that. And then, like, the athletic mind, and I love that he pulls the Yoda out of here, right? Do or do not, there is no try, right? Like, I think these are a really, like, good way to wrap your head around this. He talks about the map and the compass, right? And the map is the rational, non-intuitive thing. The compass is then the intuitive. I think I should be moving in this direction. You are smiling like ear to ear, so I'm really, really intrigued at what you're going to say right now. Go ahead.
Yeah. So every once in a while, we'll read one of these books and I'm like, this is a really good book. And then they'll explain something that I think I explain better.
Okay.
And I'm like, I should write a book.
you know, you've said this in the last, like, probably 3 months. I think you've said this at least 2 or 3 times, right? About,
yeah, which is honestly hard for me to say publicly, because I'm not that type of person who just naturally thinks that I'm better than other people at these things. But I have been talking about how you need a map and not a compass for literally years.
Yes, I know you have. I've heard you say this for years. Yes.
And in the back of my mind, you know, the thing is, like, this makes sense to me, but is it really, you know, does it make sense to other people? And then I see other people talk about it and I'm like, man, I missed my chance.
Nope.
That's not true. I didn't actually miss my chance.
I don't think you have.
But yes, all that to say, like, the difference between a map and a compass, this is a really important idea. So I guess I'll just go into, like, my version of this for a minute, if that's okay. Because yeah, like, what you really need is not to have it all planned out. That's his big point when he's talking about intuition, is like, there's one way to approach things, which is you've got the Gantt charts and you know exactly when each part of the thing is going to be done, and the waterfall method of project planning, you're going to ship it by this date, which means that you'll probably ship it about it's going to take twice as long and cost about twice as much. Mm-hmm. But, you know, you can think that way, or you can think, you know, I think I should go this direction. And so this metaphor has resonated with me for a long time, because this has been my creator path. Just the real brief version of this, I was working with the family business. I was basically going to take it over, and I got this itch to write a book. I had no idea how to write a book. I had always hated writing in English class in high school, but I figured, you know, if I'm going to write a book, I better start writing. So I did the thing that I told you to do in our coaching session. Yeah. I started writing and publishing every day before I went to the office. I did that for 2 weeks. I got connected with Asian Efficiency. They posted about a job that they were offering, and I didn't want a full-time job, but I wanted a guest post. And they said, well, we don't really do anything like that, but if you have some samples of your work, send it over. So I did. They liked it. That led to a part-time position. They offered me full-time initially. I said no. Then I eventually joined that team, joined the Blanc Media team, and all of that has led to where I am today. But the path has been writing. I never wanted to do that. Oh, I guess I want to write. And then podcasting. Oh, I don't want to do that because it's live and it's scary. And okay, I guess I want a podcast. And then it was video presentations, video courses, which is, even scarier than podcasting. And then it was live presentations. And then it was speaking in front of people, not just over Zoom like this. At each point, I was doing something that I didn't ever want to do. And when I did it, I realized, oh, that's the thing that made me come alive. So I took a step, and then I looked around and I saw what is tangentially connected to this. What is there's a term for this from one of those Steven Johnson books, the adjacent possible.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I walked into this room, and now what doors are open to me? Oh, that looks kind of interesting, and I guess I'll open that one. And you have no idea where those are going to lead you. And if you are not going to play it safe, you absolutely cannot have the plan figured out at the beginning, because you have no idea where it's going to end up. Yeah. All you can do is know this is the next step. So yeah, you don't need a map. You need a compass, which is going to say, this is the right direction. Take the next step. And as you do that, the path before you is going to become clear.
I think you need to create an action item from this book that is sit down at least twice between now and the next recording and think about this book and think hard about this, because this thing is in you. Now, is it the right time for it to come out of you? That might be a whole nother story, but it's like, this thing is in you, Mike, right? Like, you want to do this. Like, you really have this because you've talked about it. And I don't say that in any negative way at all. So don't hear that as a negative thing at all. But it's like, it's one of those things that just like randomly finds its way to seep out of you, right? In as we're talking about things.
Well, so this is the high ticket offer in a nutshell, is like helping people do this. And that's why I was struggling with, do I just focus on writing? Because I don't think that's the version of it. I have experience podcasting. I have experience with YouTube. I think people got to start with writing, but then you find a different avenue for like the right way for you to express this stuff. Mm-hmm. So like, I don't want to get so defined as like Ship 30 is for writing through social media, and Write a Passage is, writing online. Like, that's an element of it, but my unique version of this is really walking out, because I believe everybody is creative. So people who want to create something and they want to make money online doing this thing, I will help you walk this out by kind of walking the path of the compass and not the map with you.
You'll help them direct the compass, right? Like, so you're
and there's frameworks we can use to help figure out, what is the right thing, what is the wrong thing, all that kind of stuff.
You're helping them orienteer, right? If you will. Yes. Like, So I love it. Okay, so let's get back into the chapter. So we're into intuition. I have an action item coming out of this. So Chase challenges you to spend time thinking about an idea that excites you each day, right? And I think this is one of my action items is, what is the thing that excites me? And then what does that mean? Like, what do I do about it? Do I take action on it? Why does it excite me? What's the motivation behind it? So I want to do this because I think it combines the previous few chapters, right? And wraps this up really, really well into an actionable thing. I'm going to put my attention on it intentionally. It doesn't have to be the same thing, but it's going to be something that excites me every day, right? And then when I look back over those, when I do a review of those, are there commonalities, right? Like, oh, well, for the last 2 weeks or month or 2 months or whatever it is, I've been excited about this type of thing, whatever that type of thing is. What does that mean? What does that look like, right? So you're going to put your attention on it. You're going to give it time, right? So I'm going to do it daily. I'm going to give it time. And then I'm going to, through a review process or through the process, I'm going to see like what bubbles up with this intuition. So I really, really liked the way, I don't think he necessarily brought it together, tying it back to attention and time as well as he could have. But like, I really like the way those three ideas kind of come into this one action item where he challenges you to spend time thinking about something.
Awesome. Love it.
Okay. Anything else on intuition, or are you ready to jump to chapter 4?
Let's talk about constraints.
Okay, constraints. So constrain to retrain. That is the subline. Now, he immediately, or very, very early in the chapter, hits on Edward de Bono's creative ideation process. Okay, so we have a tie back into that from Bookworm.
I think that might have been the first book we did. I don't remember for sure, but I remember that was like right at the beginning.
You and I? Yeah. The six hats. We did the different
Yep.
colored hats book. Yes. So he's got other books. DeBono's got other books, and I think
Oh, okay.
I think what he calls it is lateral thinking. I think that's the phrase that he quote
Got it.
unquote coined and termed, and kind of what made him famous, was this idea of lateral thinking. But it's this creative ideation process. So I like that he tied into one of the, this book was really on target for Bookworm and the Bookworm audience. I mean, it really, really was on target.
And for us.
Yeah, for sure. So then he goes into these 4 different types of constraints, right? You have self-imposed constraints, externally imposed constraints, perceived constraints, and then environmental constraints. And each of those has sub-pieces underneath it. I'm not going to go into the sub-pieces because that'll just take too long and be boring. But it's like, I like these 4 different categories. Is like, how am I constraining myself? How am I utilizing external constraints? How am I thinking about perceived constraints, and how am I thinking about environmental constraints? And like what I like about this is, it's oftentimes we hear the word constraint and we think bad. Like constraint, like we think it's, we're not doing everything we could do, or there's something that's holding us back, or whatever it is. And I don't think that's the case. He makes that statement: constraints limit breadth, which creates space for depth and interesting results. And I think reframing it that way is a great way to think about constraints, is like, it's giving me the space to go deep in something because I'm constraining the outside, or I'm constraining the things around it.
I like this idea. I actually don't like this chapter a whole lot, because I don't think he does the idea of constraints justice. The example here is that the 4 different types of constraints that he shares, there's the 4 different categories that you talked about, and then there's a whole bunch that he describes. Some of these are just purely negative, like financial strain. That's not a lack of money. That is the stress that comes from not being able to afford things. That is something that should absolutely be removed when at all possible.
Yeah.
Right. Can you think of a good application of financial strain or an unhealthy lifestyle?
Okay.
That's another one that he mentions.
Okay. So I don't know if that was rhetorical or not, but like, I'm thinking about this from a business standpoint. And what I'll say is, there are certain situations where let's say we could go buy this new fancy machine for $750,000. But the business right now can't afford $750,000 capital output. So what are we going to do? We're going to try to think and brainstorm really, really hard about other creative ways to solve that problem. And we end up coming to a solution that changes like the process, right? I'm thinking very industrial and systems engineering right now.
Sure.
But that allows us to then be more creative long term, or more efficient long term than it would have been, which was the easy button, just buying that $750,000 machine that would have allowed us to do the thing. So it's like, but I don't know if that's getting at what you're getting at, because you went.
Well, I'll give you that one then. But what about like an unhealthy lifestyle? Like, that is not a constraint. That is a problem to be solved.
Yeah.
Right. A messy, cluttered, or uninspired living situation. That's something you should change.
Yes. Yeah.
And I feel like when you talk about constraints, I agree with the premise. When you are trying to figure out what to do, sometimes having specific constraints helps you get more creative in defining potential solutions. That is why I love the whole idea of mental models. Mental models are basically applying constraints by looking at something from a particular perspective and ignoring the other data points.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's what he's talking about here, is like, you may have these constraints and you recognize like you've really been leaning into the financial strain one, or an unhealthy lifestyle one, or whatever, but that's not really that big a deal. You can fix that. So discard those for a moment and think about the other ones. But that's not how the list is presented. And one of the things that I jotted down is that the self-imposed constraints are a powerful point of leverage on the path of overcoming any challenge. Now, those are self-imposed constraints. That's one category out of the 4. So maybe that's the one he's telling us to look at, as opposed to the other ones are just kind of, they are what they are, and they don't belong in the same category. But I don't know. I just feel like the message of this chapter, while I agree with the idea and I think it's really powerful, it seemed a little bit muddy to me.
I could see that now. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't pick up on that while I was reading. But that actually makes sense as I look through these 4 different types of constraints. It's almost like the self-imposed and the externally imposed are more positive. You know what I mean? Like they're going to help us out more, and then the perceived and the environmental are those that you want to get rid of. Yeah, like I'm processing what you're saying out loud right now. I see that.
Yeah, that's all I got for this one though. I like the emphasis of hustle culture never ending, because I feel like some of the stories that he shares, I don't know, I think it's probably not where he is right now, but as he shares his story, you definitely get the vibe that he was in that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So it's nice to hear him say, that's not the ideal.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So I'm ready to move on to lever 5, play. He titles it the most important work we do. So play. He describes it as the fuel of life. He talks about the fact that we get it essentially like driven out of us, this idea of play, to become more serious, and that happens by we shouldn't be doing those things. We should be sitting down and getting our work done, and we should be focusing, and we should do all of those things. Not to go too far on a tangent here, but this is a big reason why we homeschool, and this is a big reason why I'm a proponent of homeschool, is because we do a lot of actual schooling. My wife does a ton of actual schooling during the day, but we are able to intermix it with the kids going and playing, and the kids coming back and then doing more work and then going and playing. And I have 4 boys, and with boys, I mean, that's huge, right? Like, especially young boys, like to try to lock them down to a chair and say, you're going to focus for the next 6 hours of the day with like a lunch break. It's just not realistic. But to say like, hey, we're going to take 15 minutes and we're going to learn spelling, and then you're going to get to go and play with Legos for 15 minutes, and then you're going to come back and we're going to do this other thing. Like, it's just so much more natural in my mind for an effective way. And then the other thing we don't get is, I mean, they don't hate it. Like, they don't hate the idea of doing things and learning. So I didn't want to go down too far in a rabbit hole, but I know you homeschool as well, so I don't know if you have anything that you want to say on that.
Not with the homeschooling thing in particular, but he does mention that when you were a kid, no one needed to tell you how to play.
Yeah.
And again, this is a different version of this is something that I've talked about for years. I remember presenting this at MacStock and saying that when you were a kid, no one needed to teach you how to be creative. Mm-hmm. And there were some people who came and pushed back on that. But I think it is generally true that when you give a kid a box of crayons, they are uninhibited. So this actually like made the connection for me where creativity and play are actually connected. Why? Because when you play, you don't really care what comes out of it. You're just having fun in the moment. And with creativity, I think the thing that keeps people from being creative is not wanting to lose, not wanting to be wrong, not wanting to have someone look at something that you made and say, this is garbage. So there's this quote that I love by Hugh MacLeod that goes something along the lines of, when you get to we're all born creative, and then when you get to school, they replace your crayons with boring books on algebra and history, and being struck with the creative bug years later is just a wee voice inside saying, I'd like my crayons back.
Yeah.
So like, I kind of like to think of myself as an enabler for people to ask for their crayons back. Yeah. Because I really do think like we've all got something in us. We have a unique way to create, and everybody should tap into that because there's so many benefits that come from it. And I feel like the benefits of being creative are very similar to the benefits of playing. And it kind of struck me as I was thinking about this. Really, if you were to condense it, play is really just the perspective that you should have towards your work. And as you play with it, you are naturally creative, I think. Also, I had an action item here, though, because I was a little bit mortified when I considered, what do I do for fun?
Okay.
I'm not sure. I mean, there are things that I enjoy doing, like I enjoy going for runs and things like that. But at this point, I feel like I do that kind of because I want to stay healthy, and it feels good. It's not just something that it's like I'm going to go do whatever the heck I feel like doing right now. I don't know what that would be.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, I struggled with this actually a little bit the last couple days being sick because I'm sick. Like if there was ever a time to just lay in bed and do what you want, it would be now. But I found my mind racing is like, well, when am I going to get this Screencast Online module done? And how am I going to prep for the life theme cohort session that we have to do? And what am I going to do about the podcast recordings that I'm supposed to do on Monday and Tuesday? I had so much trouble quieting that down and just like watching a movie or whatever. And I think I need something
Yeah.
that I just do for fun. I don't know what it is. So ask me next time.
I and Chase Jarvis would agree with you. Play utterly destroys anxiety, right? Like, and you're in that situation where you need some play so you can overcome and utterly destroy that anxiety. I didn't know, and I should have, right? But I was taken back by the fact that there's the National Institute for Play, right? I was like, oh, what a cool, what a cool institute. I mean, it's a pretty awesome institute. I like the concept he has here where he says work becomes work because of our orientation towards it. And I think about that in my classes, and I think it's not going to turn into a formal action item, but this is something that like I want to keep stewing on. I think as I go through is like, how do I make more of my classes like play, where the students are going to learn just as much. It's just not going to feel like work. It's going to feel like, oh, we're playing with this problem. We're trying to solve it. We're playing with the software, and we're trying to do it. And I understand I'm never going to hit every student, right? There's still going to be students that walk into there and they're going to be like, I don't like this. I never liked it. I didn't like it before I walked into this class. I read the description and I don't like it. But I think, how can I orient my schooling, my teaching, and what I'm doing with my university students to be more like play? Right? I think that's what I want to do, because I learn a ton through that. Like, oh, I want to get better at video editing. What am I going to do? I'm going to shoot some video. I'm going to play around with it. I don't care if it's any good or not. I'm just going to play around with like trying to figure out how to make cool transitions and put some background music behind it. So how can I do that? Like, I think that's something I want to do in my formal teaching as well.
Awesome.
All right, so lever 6, let's move on to failure. Failure, a feature, not a bug. Now, Mike, before we start this one and we talk about this one, was this chapter longer, and did it feel longer than the other chapters, or did I make that up because it was an interesting part of my week? But I felt like this chapter was like twice as long as every other chapter, and I could have just made that up.
Well, I feel like the beginning chapters were fairly long. I do think this one, I do have tons of notes for this one, not that many from the previous one. I think this is also the best chapter in the whole book.
Okay.
For reasons being that it's a unique take on failure.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be very easy to share all of the platitudes about failure, how it's necessary and you got to go through it. But he kind of calls out the problem with that I have experienced. And so when I read this, I really felt seen. And I feel like he's probably speaking to a lot of people when he talks about how, it's true that without failure, there's no success. And it may be necessary for growth, but it still feels awful.
Yes.
So you're going to naturally try to avoid it.
Yep.
And when you just talk about it intellectually, words on a page, it's kind of like, oh yeah, all these successful people say, Jocko says, he even mentions extreme ownership in here, that you just gotta go through it. And it's not that easy because it still sucks.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So he talks about making it a frenemy. I like that framing a lot.
Yeah.
So it's not something that's just going to become your buddy along the journey, which is sort of the vibe I get when I hear other people talk about it. He's like, it's going to have to be there and it's unfortunate, but you can still kind of get some good out of it. And I feel like just that framing kind of changes the whole discussion about it for me.
Yeah. So I did a lot of work in the entrepreneurship community and entrepreneurship education community in the past. And like one of the things that at the time everybody would say is fail forward fast, fail forward fast, fail forward fast, right? And he reframes this and he basically is like, it's not fail fast. Try not to fail, right? Which is something that always bothered me. It's like, well, hold on, we're gonna try to fail, but it's like try not to fail, but it's the idea of recover quickly, and like there,
Yeah, and that then he gets into the MVP stuff,
Yep.
which has always kind of bugged me about that fail fast thing too, because MVP is not, failing, shipping a bad version
No.
of something. It's finding that balance between the speed and the quality.
Yep. Yeah. So I really like this idea of like instead of fail forward fast, it's recover quickly from inevitable failure, right? Like it's going to happen. You don't want it to happen. If you can make it out without, without failing, great. Like do that. Like that's what you want to do. But then when it happens, learn and recover quickly. Learn and recover quickly. And I really like that reframing. Just to kind of give a summary or like a little bit of an overview of the chapter, he talks about three types of failure: basic, complex, intelligent. I'd never heard anybody pitch failure in that way. So
I like that.
I think those were interesting. He gives you 5 rules for failing. Don't fail or quit before you actually fail. Don't fail to suck. Fail a lot. Fail fast. And then fail publicly. Right. So he gives you these ideas for. So he not only throws higher level like meta thoughts about failure out there, but then he also like kind of says, okay, now when we fail, here's what we should do. Classify it as a type of failure, and then here are some things that you don't want to do, or that you want to do as it relates to failure. The one I'll throw out here before I turn it back over to you for your thoughts: rejection therapy. Try and fail 100 plus times to desensitize yourself from failure. Now, this one I think is really, really interesting because again, he's not saying try to fail 100 times. He's saying try a bunch of things. You're going to fail a bunch of them. Sum that up to some big, large number of failures, and then just be like, oh, okay, I'm still alive. Everything's fine. Like nothing broke majorly, and we're just going to keep plugging on, and failure is going to be part of life, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah, and he shared a story of, I forget the person's name, but they basically were just going to try to get a whole bunch of no's, so they started asking for ridiculous things, like a ride in a cop car, and he walked into the donut shop and he wants 5 donuts in the shape of the Olympic rings and he wants it for free, and he was blown away that people actually started saying yes.
Yep. That was a good story.
Yeah, I think that is powerful. That's sort of coupled with the one other thing that I got out of this is that the thing that keeps us from trying again is not failure itself. It's the fear of failure.
Mm-hmm.
It's the fear of hearing the no. And so, yeah, that's probably something that I could practice. I did not capture an action item from that specifically, but I can definitely see the benefits of that practice.
Okay, so we've reframed failure. Now let's go to lever 7 and let's practice. So practice, success leaves clues. So he's big on practice here. He's got 3 pillars of practice: the fundamentals, the process, and the identity. 10 principles of practice. And different to some of the other books we've read, I didn't feel like these principles, these lists or whatever were like listicle styles. They were much more like just things to think about. Like as you're thinking about this big idea of practice, or as you're thinking about this big idea of failure, here are some ways to, I don't know, operationalize maybe a word, or just like put a framework around it, which I really liked that it wasn't listically, it was more frameworky, that was valuable to me. But he's got these 10 principles of practice. Yep. So I don't want to go through them all. That we can hit ones if you want to. Then I get an action item out of this chapter. So every day for 30 days straight, write down what you want and how you want to be. Commit to taking no longer than 2 minutes for this exercise. Just check your gut and spit out the answer. Every day, refine it. Get clearer and take action towards your answer. So write down what you want and how you want to be. And I thought that was a really interesting, action item to come out of this chapter on practice.
Yeah, that was the action item that he gives you at the end of the book. And I was kind of like, no. But when I read it, I was like, I wonder if Cory's going to do that.
Yeah. Why'd you go? Nah.
Because it feels to me like a different path towards a life theme.
Okay.
And I feel like I've got the clarity of that already. But I think that's a cool way of framing it. And that probably feels a little bit more approachable. I don't think that gets you all the way there, but it definitely helps you helps move you in the right direction.
Yeah.
I like this chapter a lot. I also have an issue with this chapter because he talks about deliberate practice and he mentions Anders Ericsson.
Mm-hmm.
And Anders Ericsson wrote the book Peak, which I really liked that book.
Mm-hmm.
He also kind of attributes Anders Ericsson with the idea of the 10,000 hours to become a master. And I didn't, in the moment go back and look at this, but that feels off to me because having read Peak, the whole idea there is that how you practice matters. And I think he even talks about how the 10,000 hours is a myth. I think Malcolm Gladwell is the one who talked about that with the violinists, how it becomes 10,000 hours to become a master. But I believe in that book, Anders Ericsson kind of blows that up by saying, if they just go in a room and they practice sloppy or whatever, they're disengaged, they're not going to reach that level of proficiency. And actually, if you're deliberate about your practice, you can get to a level of mastery much quicker than the 10,000 hours. Now, I could be totally off with that. I read that book years ago, but that's the thing that sticks with me from that. So I feel like it's a little bit misattributed here. And the 10,000 hours idea in general that he's talking about and how you really need to practice is a little bit misguided. It really doesn't take away from his point. It really just stuck out to me because I have all of this context from other books that I've read. Yep. I'm probably the only person on the planet who's like,
I was gonna say, like, I read it and I'm familiar with what you're referencing, but it didn't bother me, like not at all. Like, I didn't think about it, once. I was like, all right, whatever.
Yeah. So there's that. But the other thing that really stands out to me from this, and I love this, and is a big reason why I feel like me and Chase Jarvis should be friends.
Okay.
He mentions that imagination plus action equals identity. And this is the second time in this book where I feel like he's talking about something that I talk about. But I like the way that he frames this better. So I actually have my PKM stack framework. And when I went to Boise and I recorded those videos, I reworked that framework because the top level, I actually changed it this time to identity. Mm-hmm. And the way that I talk about that, just real briefly, the PKM stack framework, you got information at the bottom level, stuff you don't have to do anything with. Then there's the ideas. Those are things that you could potentially do something with. You got to figure out which ones are worth taking action on. Above that is the actions level. If you live a default life, you just are exposed to all this information that people throw at you, that determines the quantity and the quality of ideas that you have and the actions and projects you engage with. Not happy with the results, change the process. Start from the top, which is the identity. And that's the vision and the values. And as I've been talking through this with people, I'm explaining this as like, this is anchored in who you are, but also who you want to become. So the life theme cohort that we're going through right now, one of the steps in there is help people create an image of their ideal future. Mm-hmm. What would it look like if you had an abundance of life? So think big and then act small. How can you start living out pieces of that ideal future right now and moving in that direction? And he very succinctly describes what I've been trying to tell people to do in that life theme cohort. Use your imagination, then take action on it, and then that becomes your identity. Yeah. So that is the thing, he's talking about habits in this book too. I think that's not in this chapter. That might have been a previous chapter. The identity-based habits.
It's in this chapter. Yeah, it's in this chapter.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Identity is an incredibly powerful alignment tool for shaping our habits. Yeah, so he alludes to Atomic Habits by James Clear, and great book. But I really like just that formula. Imagination plus action equals identity. And I feel like framed that way, it's exciting, at least to me. Mm-hmm. It's like my identity. Yeah, there are, there's a history there, and there is decisions that I've made that have created the environment that I find myself in, but it's not set in stone. It's sort of like I was watching Back to the Future the other day when I was sick. And then the third one, Marty's girlfriend comes back with the note from the future. And he's like, it's erased. And Doc's like, of course it's erased. No one's future has been written yet.
Yeah.
That's the kind of picture I get with this. And it feels very enabling. I feel like it's exciting to me. And I hope that, at the end of this book, this is the perfect place to give people permission to go change their future.
Now, and he doubles, triples, quadruples down on that. This entire book has been in preparation to make you aware and give you a not so gentle nudge in the direction of your dreams. So he basically, I
Yeah.
love that he like basically expresses it so clearly. He's like, the whole thing I've been doing right now is for this right here, to hit you with this right here. The last thing I have on this chapter is the Maya Angelou, the noun verb thing. It is in this chapter. In order to be the noun, she, Maya Angelou, did the verb. So she wanted to be a writer. So what did she do? She wrote, and it's like, that's a really cool, succinct way for me to think about, if I want to be, boom, I need to that thing. Like I need to do that thing. I just really like that.
So just a point of clarification on how brilliant Clay Herbert is. Like that is, what we should be thinking about as individuals, right? So Clay Herbert was talking about, as a marketer, positioning your service or your product. It's really, when someone asks you or comes to your sales page, trying to figure out what are you doing, as the trusted guide. I help people, and you can define people. So that's like a blank that you fill in. So for me, maybe it's, aspiring creators, verb their noun.
Yeah.
Okay. So like they want to do the verb.
Yeah.
They want to be the noun and then do the verb, right? But you help these people. So you make it super clear.
Yeah,
Does that make sense? I feel like
sense.
I'm doing a bad job describing
no, it makes
this.
Total
but
sense.
when I heard him describe it, I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so simple.
Yeah. I'm writing this down right now because I think it's really interesting. Verb their noun, right? That's what you said?
I help blank, verb their noun. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. Okay, so we have just finished the 7 levers. Unless you have anything else, Mike, I didn't want to. Okay, so now there is a 3-page, 4-page something conclusion. I don't have anything to say on the conclusion. I don't know if you do or not.
I don't know. I think 2 points maybe. One of the things he says is that the unique life that you have lived has created a unique point of view. And I think that when it comes to never playing it safe, that means that your career path should be unique as well. Doesn't mean it has to be completely original. No one's ever done this thing before, but how you go about it should be original, and you should be creative in how you do the work that you do. So I guess, just kind of think about what is the unique perspective that you bring to the work that you do. And then also he says that life is a game where we only ever play against ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a lot of temptation to compare yourself to other people. When you do that, you kind of enter into this scarcity mindset and view success as a zero-sum game. I think that is not accurate. I think just because somebody else has had success doing a thing does not in any way diminish the amount of success that I can potentially have doing the exact same thing, because I'm going to do it differently. Yeah. If I had been there first and done the thing, my version of success would look different than whoever I tend to compare myself to. So I don't know. It's a good exhortation at the end, but yeah, there's not a whole lot here, which I'm kind of actually glad for.
Yeah, me too.
I was sort of expecting, here's a rehash of the 7 different levers, and it was unnecessary, and it's not there. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, I remember reading it going, okay, that was good. And then it was done. And I was like, okay, I'm glad it's done. So action items. I have 3. No, I have 4 that come out of this. So the one is the one Mike gave me as part of the pro show. So I need to take something that I've written and I need to publish it online. Now I'm going to roll this into the book, and I'm going to say this is practice. So I'm going to do practice with this. So take something I've written and I have to publish it somewhere online. Okay, my next one is what's my thing? So trying to figure out, what's the thing? What's the one thing that I want to talk about? Then and I would say, what's the one thing not as a professor? Because that will define that better. Okay, then what's the one thing that excites me, and what does that mean? Right. So what's the one thing that excites me? What's that mean? I need to think about that. Okay, my last one would be then every day for 30 days straight, I need to write down what I want and how I want to be. And that will be the hardest one for me, Mike, because remembering to do it every day for 30 days, that'll be the hardest one for me, and actually doing it.
Yeah, this I would encourage you to like create a note
Yeah.
where you collect all these. So I don't know where you're planning on doing it. Maybe it's just like you got a paper journal, something, note card at your desk, whatever. But make sure that you save those because it'd be cool to see how it changes throughout the 30 days.
Okay, Mike, what are your action items?
All right, I have 3 action items. One is to create a short list of people whose opinion of me really matters. The second one is to have an answer for the question, what's your thing? And then the third one is to figure out what I am going to do for fun. And I would add to this, I think, have a plan to do this regularly. I hesitate to add that to the action item, but I feel like that's really where this is successful or not, is if I figure out when I'm going to do this.
Okay.
So this could be, more board games, video games, whatever. I was toying around with buying a Steam Deck because they had a Black Friday sale. I did not.
I'm proud of you.
Now kind of wish maybe I would have.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I got to find something though that's just like not productive in the least.
Okay. All right, and then report back to me. I'm intrigued to see what you pick. I have no idea what you're gonna pick. Like I really have no idea what
I
you're
don't either.
Okay. All right. So now let's move into style and rating. My book. So I'll start with style and rating. So I like the structure. I like the style of the book. I thought it laid out well. I think the 7 levers was a good way to organize it. I liked the integration of stories, and the stories I felt like were appropriate, and they weren't kind of forced or too long, too short, anything like that. Like I thought they did a good job supporting the book. I like the mix between some of the framework, theoretical, kind of like more meta stuff, and then some of the action item type stuff. I thought you got a good balance through there. There wasn't really a point in this book where I was like, oh my goodness, like I'm just so tired of listening to this. There was a little bit of what he calls out, and we talked about this a little bit earlier in the show, or at the beginning of the show, right? There was a little book where he calls out like, hey, don't immediately write yourself off. Like, don't immediately say like, this isn't for me, and blah, blah, blah. What's interesting about that, and this is, I think, my biggest hang up with the book, or my biggest struggle with the book, is the book's called Never Play It Safe. And he talks about safety early on, but then I don't get a ton of tie to like safety throughout most of the rest of the book, except for maybe the failure chapter. So it's like, I feel like the title of the book and then the content of the book don't really match up like super, super well for me. I don't think it's terrible. Like, I don't think it's like this egregious thing where it was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that's what I actually titled this book, because it's not anything like the content of the book. But at the same time, I just don't think it does. I don't have a better title. I don't know what I would have titled it. I like the 7 levers. I think that's fine. I like the safety chapter, or like the safety section where he's kind of framing this. I just don't know if I think it's as clean from the title the whole way through the book as it would be. So like that's a knock I'm going to give it. From a style and rating standpoint. Then now I'm going to get into the one where I just think this is very, very different for someone who has 4, 5, however many children, right? Like I just think, and has not started and exited like multiple companies, right? Like I just think it's different. Like I know, Mike, you tried to correct me early on in the show, and you're going to probably try to correct me again, and I'm totally okay with that. I just think it's different. Like, and I think there wasn't enough acknowledgement of that like where you're at in life might change the way these things work. That being said, I don't think it impacts any of the frameworks. I don't think it impacts any of the chapters. I still think you get a lot of value out of the chapters. I think this book is good for anybody who reads it to get good, valuable things out of there. About thinking about work, thinking about creativity, thinking about life, thinking about safety, and how those things kind of blend together. But I wanted more of an acknowledgement of like different life phases or styles or choices, and how that would play into it. So all of that being said, from that standpoint, I give this book a 4 out of 5. Right? I think it was good. I think you have a benefit of reading it, or it's beneficial to be read. I think it's good for the bookworm audience. I think they'll get a lot out of it. But there were a couple things there that knock it down to a 4 for me.
All right. Well, I will disagree with the the stage of life comment that you made at the beginning.
Understood.
Because I feel like I've gone through it myself. I think that this is an interesting book because this could totally just be my own personal journey that I went through. But the way I read this without him explicitly saying it is whatever you have been doing up until this point is likely wrong and you should rethink everything. Do you think that's fair? Because you're in a totally different situation having read this. And I think it did not have that impact on you. And I don't think it necessarily has to, but
I think that's fair.
I think that's kind of who he's writing it towards, I guess.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I think it's a very fair statement.
Okay. So I don't know if that's good or bad.
Yep.
On the one hand, I feel like you don't want to just tell that person, hey, you should probably quit your job. But also, on the other hand, I feel a little bit more emboldened recently, and I've seen other people talking about this. Like the one that comes to mind for me is Paul Millard with The Pathless Path, and Good Work was kind of alluding to that too. And I think he would be more direct and say it more strongly, be like, hey, maybe you should just chuck your job.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like Chase Jarvis is playing it safe with the wording in Never Play It Safe.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah.
And I don't know that is necessarily the case. I think that there are definitely pros and cons to that. The pro is that I feel you get a more general book that has 7 different levers that you can apply in a lot more broadly in terms of context. The negative of that, I think, is that the message loses some of its potency. And where he is, he's probably trying to write a book that is going to sell more copies. Maybe the first book that he writes, that's the one where he really just sinks his whole heart into it. This is the message I really want to get out into the world. But it seems like your follow-up books, those are the ones that, especially if you're going through a publisher, they're going to try and encourage you to make it, more broadly palatable to more audiences. That's my not having worked with a publisher before impression of how these things would go. I really like his style. I really like his stories. I agree that, when he's talking about they don't have kids, but they have a dog, and it's he says it's not the same as a kid, but sort of the language he uses that you can tell like he's the one the dog parent. They have the bumper sticker in their car.
I do.
And that makes it a little bit less relatable to me. But I don't know. There's some really good stuff in here. The way that he talks through it is really good. I have some nitpicks with some different things. And I feel like there is a different version of this that would have come together even more solidly to support a specific point that I'm not sure he wants to make. So
okay.
Do I hold that against him? I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah.
I don't think this is a 5-star book. I think there are some things in here that he sort of alludes to, these powerful concepts that you can totally go much deeper in. And, that's where if he's just focused on, here's how identity-based habits is going to help you transition from the soul-sucking day job to living your passion or whatever. It's more, I don't know, that feels more like, well, this is a unique message and I want to lean into every word that you're saying, as opposed to, oh, you're talking about identity-based habits now. I've already read something on that, if that makes sense. Because he mentions a lot of other books in here that speak to these different topics.
Yes.
So I feel like the way that you're going to, if you're going to do like a general book like this, where you mention a whole bunch of these other topics, where there are whole books written on them, and try to bring them together, you've really got to have a really specific way that you are, or argument that you are making with this. And that's not to say that Never Play It Safe is not a specific argument. I think that there's a lot of good stuff in here, and it'll challenge anybody in any situation. but I think you're kind of exhibit A for why he should have maybe doubled down on some stuff. Because you're just kind of like, well, yeah, maybe not for me because he doesn't really get it.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Force people to do something with it.
Yeah.
If he says, if you follow the traditional path, you have been living a lie your entire life. And what you really need to do is quit your job and go do whatever, because all the things I have listed in my notes, you have more power than you realize. You have more time than you realize. Just do the thing you really want to do. Now, someone like you, Cory, has to wrestle with like, do I believe him or do I not believe him?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And I feel like you should make people make that choice.
Yeah.
You're like 90% of the way there.
Yeah.
Just say the quiet part out loud.
Yeah. I understood.
So, yeah, so I was going into it at the beginning. I'm like, oh man, this is totally gonna be a 5-star book. I sort of lost some momentum and steam as we went. I still think it's really good. And I would encourage everybody in the bookworm audience to read it. If for no other reason, I mean, you may go through it and be like, yeah, totally not for me. But I still think it's entertaining. I still think there's some things that he'll give you to chew on. And I still think it'll be fun. And you get a lot out of the stories that he shares. So I'll join you at the 4 stars.
Okay. So a double 4-star. All right. So, Mike, what are you thinking about for the next book?
The next one I'm really nervous about. We're going to read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. And the reason I'm nervous about this one is I have a feeling I'm not going to like it a whole lot.
Okay. All right. Have you started it yet? Have you picked it up yet?
I've tried.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Yeah, I cracked it open this morning, and just the very like introduction on like who Marcus Aurelius was, like he's held up as this gold standard Stoic philosopher where all of this productivity wisdom comes from. And I think there's probably going to be some good stuff in there, but I don't know. Like, I just don't like that framing, even at the beginning of the version that I've got.
Understood. Mike, I'm trying to find it right now. Which version are we reading? Ray something, but I can't remember the last name.
No, it's the last name is Hayes. It's got like a picture of a bird on the front.
Gregory Hayes. Okay,
Gregory
sorry,
Hayes.
I was way
yeah.
off.
So the one that I have that version. I also have that same translation, but I have the fancy Ryan Holiday.
Okay.
one.
Yeah. So if you're reading along, we're going to be doing the Gregory Hayes version. I personally have no idea how different the versions are, but I know that there are like a bunch of them. Like there are a ton of translations of this and versions of this. So.
Yeah, because it was written in Latin, I think.
Yeah.
So that's another reason I'm nervous about it, is like, how well is this going to translate?
Okay. I'm excited. I mean, I'm excited, even if it's a complete, like, absolute bomb. And I don't think it's going to be, but like, I'm intrigued. For it. So, all right. And then I have the next book. So the next book is Simple Marketing for Smart People by Billy Broaz. And it's also got a tie to Tiago Forte. They're actually,
he's Tiago's marketing guy.
Okay. So they're co-authors on this. And I mean, full disclosure, the reason why I want to read this one is because I want to learn more about marketing. And Mike has read this one before. And when I pitched it to him, he's like, yes, definitely. This would be a great book for both you and the bookworm audience. And I was like, all right, cool. We're in.
Now, before you completely write this off and you don't want to listen to that one because it's a marketing book, I will tell you this is not your standard marketing book. It's really more of a messaging and communication book. And he has a framework that we'll talk through in terms of like, how do you actually help people? We sort of talked about some of those same things even today with like the Clay Herbert stuff. It is so much not a marketing book in that I read through the whole thing. I loved it so much. I wanted to know what else he has done. And he mentions very briefly this larger like course that he does, but he doesn't give you the name. I spent hours trying to find the course that he does as a way to go deeper into this stuff.
Why would he not?
Right? That's how like not pushy salesy it is, which is what most people will think of when it comes to marketing.
Okay.
All right. So this is, you should listen to this one, probably pick this one up and read it too, just for the fact that it's going to be so radically different from what you are expecting.
Okay. Good. Mike, do you have any gap books for between now and next time?
I do. I feel a little bit bad sharing this as a gap book, but I shared something on Blue Sky, which, by the way, you mentioned that we're on Blue Sky. The reason that I shared about this gap book was that you are making an appearance in a Screencast Online video module.
I am?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I was showing how to mention people using the app Croissant.
Oh yeah.
And then I like searched for you because you can search for the person's name, and I knew your whole name wasn't going to be in there. So I was like, oh, well, let's cut it off and look for Hickson. Okay, that's not there now, CA. Yeah. And then with Croissant, it allows you to cross post to Blue Sky, Mastodon, and Threads. So it shows like all the different options, and you like tag you select the options, and then you can actually post it to 3 different places and have the app mentions be the correct app mentions in those 3 different places.
Oh, that's
pretty cool.
Yeah, that's real cool.
Yeah, it's a cool app. Mac Stories just named it like the app of the year, I'm pretty sure, for their Mac Stories Selects or whatever. So anyways, I mentioned this book. I don't want to sound fancy, but one of the benefits of having podcasts is that occasionally people who write books that I want to read will reach out. Anne-Laure Lecoumphe wrote a book called Tiny Experiments, and her marketing director reached out to us and scheduled an interview for the Focus podcast. So we had that interview, and it was amazing. And we're going to release that when the book comes out. Prior to doing those interviews, we always ask for copies of the book because I want to read through the whole thing before I talk to the author. So I did. And this book, people, go pre-order this book right now. Okay. Let's blow this thing up and give Anne a great launch, because this is a phenomenal book. I think you could probably already know what I'm going to rate it when we actually talk about it, but we do need to talk about this on Bookworm. It's not going to be out until February or March, I think. But basically what we got was the finished manuscript. Now they got to get them printed and all that kind of stuff. Tiny Experiments by Anne-Laure Lecoumphe is one that everyone who listens to Bookworm should read. Man, I was thinking after I read this, and like, I want to, because it's end of the year. I was thinking about like those top books that I read this year. I want this to be the book of the year, but I can't name it the book of the year because it's not out yet.
Yep.
It's so good. It's so good. So yeah, go pre-order this one, and let's blow this up.
And Mike, how did you learn about it again?
I actually have followed Anne-Laure for a long time.
Okay.
And I went back through my email and I realized that we had actually scheduled her to be on the Focus podcast back in like episode 70 or something. She got super sick. After that, she sort of got successful and we lost touch and she never came on the show. I'm a paying member for her community, the Nest Labs.
Okay.
And so when I heard she was going to write a book, I was like, this is going to be good regardless, but it's so far exceeded my expectations. And she is just a super smart, super thoughtful person. Like this is a good one. Okay. And it's a productivity book, but it's a breath of fresh air in the productivity space. I kind of felt a little bit bad going through this one because Chase Jarvis mentions Tiny Experiments a couple times, right? But she's got a whole different take on it. Yeah. It's sort of the same idea, but she does a great job of putting this one together. Okay. So.
All right, so I have a.
Right, I gotta stop pumping a book that's not out yet. So
yes,
what are you reading?
Yes, you do. Yeah. So my gap book would be it's a book called "Praying Like Monks, Living Like Fools" by Tyler Staton. As you might be able to guess, it's about prayer. So I thought that was an interesting one that popped up, and I'm taking a look at it. So that concludes our show. Let's put Never Play It Safe on the shelf. Let's pick up Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Okay, for those of you who are interested in more, we do a pro show before. In this pro show, Mike gave me a coaching session on my creative endeavors or possible creative endeavors. It was a ton of fun to see him do a tiny experiment on coaching from a creative standpoint. But you also get the bootleg version of the show, which gives you essentially the show from the moment we start the Zoom call. It gives it to you early. You get a bookworm wallpaper, If you're interested in those things, you can go to patreon.com/bookwormfm. It's $7 a month, and that'll get you access to the bootleg early, and then the pro show, which has the additional content where we pick a pretty random topic and we talk about it before the main show. So thanks for listening, and pick up Meditations by Marcus Aurelius for our next episode.